19-year-old woman is forced into a marriage she never chose, paraded before a judgmental frontier town, and handed to a man everyone fears. Expecting cruelty, she prepares to disappear inside her own life. But on their wedding day, her husband gives her a gift so unexpected, so quietly powerful, that it reshapes her future, and leaves an entire town standing in stunned silence. This is a slow-burn Wild West story about dignity, choice, and the kind of strength that never raises its voice. Before we begin, take a moment to tell us where you're watching from today. And if stories of quiet courage, justice, and unexpected kindness move you, please subscribe. It helps us bring more stories like this to you. Married at 19 against her will, she feared him. Until his wedding gift shocked the whole town, she almost said no out loud. The word pressed against her teeth as the preacher lifted his eyes and asked if she would take Clayton Hartwell as her lawful husband. For a breathless moment, the entire town of Red Willow leaned forward, hungry for her refusal, waiting for the crack in her voice that would confirm everything they already believed about her. Too young, too ruined, too weak to survive what was coming. 19 years old, barely more than a girl, and already being handed over like a debt settled in public. Her fingers trembled inside the borrowed lace gloves, damp with sweat despite the dry heat of the afternoon. Dust clung to the hem of her pale dress, carried in by boots that had tracked judgment down the aisle with her. She could feel their eyes, sharp as burrs, catching on every shallow breath she took. Say it, they seemed to whisper. Break, cry. Give us a reason to pity you. But she did not. Yes, she said instead, her voice thin but steady, and the word fell into the silence like a stone dropped into a well. Clayton Hartwell did not smile. That, more than anything, terrified her. He stood beside her, tall and still, his presence like the shadow of a canyon wall, inescapable, unreadable. He was older by more than a decade, broad-shouldered, his dark coat pressed neat despite the long ride in. A scar cut pale along his knuckle, where one hand rested calmly at his side. The other held his hat, fingers relaxed, as though this moment carried no weight at all. The preacher cleared his throat and continued, but the town had already begun to breathe again, disappointed she had not made a scene. They all knew Clayton Hartwell. They knew the stories, passed low over whiskey glasses and behind shuttered windows. They said he owned half the land north of the river and enforced the other half with silence and consequence. They said men crossed him once and never did again. They said he was cold, dangerous, unmarried by design, and now he had a wife who had never chosen him. The kiss was brief, chaste, barely a brush of obligation. When Clayton stepped back, he did not tighten his grip on her arm. He did not lean in to claim her. He simply turned toward the crowd, eyes lifting at last. The murmurs died instantly. There was something about the way he looked at people, not threatening, not cruel, but complete, as if he saw through layers they preferred to hide behind. Men shifted their feet. Women pressed their lips together. No one met his gaze for long. She expected him to pull her close then, to mark her as his, to show the town she belonged to him now. Instead, he did something no one expected. He released her. Just stepped away, creating a sliver of space between them that felt enormous. We're not finished, the preacher said quickly, uneasy. Clayton inclined his head. I know. He turned to her, not with possession, but with something like restraint. Before we leave, he said, his voice low and even, carrying easily across the church, there's a gift. A ripple went through the room. A gift, at a wedding like this. Some snorted quietly. Others leaned forward again, anticipation sharpening. She felt her stomach twist. Gifts came with strings. Everyone knew that. Clayton reached into his coat, slow enough that no one mistook the movement for threat. He drew out a folded document, worn at the edges, and held it out, not to her, but to the preacher. This is for her, he said. Read it. Confusion creased the preacher's brow as he took the paper. He adjusted his spectacles, eyes moving across the page. Once. Then again his face drained of color. He stopped, swallowed. Mr. Hartwell, are you certain? Clayton's answer was simple. Yes. The preacher turned to her, hands trembling slightly. Mrs. Hartwell. He corrected himself, clearly shaken. This document states that your husband has deeded to you, effective immediately, full ownership of the land known as Willow Creek Acres, including the house, livestock, and all profits thereof. It further states that you are under no marital obligation of residence, obedience, or, he paused, glanced up, incredulous, conjugal expectation. The silence that followed was not empty. It was stunned. She felt the blood rush in her ears, heat blooming across her chest as if she had been struck from within. What? The word slipped out before she could stop it. Clayton finally looked at her then. Really looked. Not as a burden. Not as a prize. But as a person standing at the edge of something she had never been offered before. A marriage by force is not a marriage, he said quietly. And fear is not consent. A woman gasped aloud. Someone else laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You're free, Clayton continued, his voice steady. Free to stay, free to leave. Free to live on that land as you choose. My name protects you here. Nothing else is required. The preacher's hands shook as he passed the document to her. She stared at the ink, the looping signature at the bottom, Clayton Hartwell's name, written without flourish, final as a closing door. Her knees nearly gave out. All her life, choices had been taken, spoken over, decided for her. She had learned early that survival meant silence. And now, in front of everyone who had judged her unworthy of kindness, a man she had feared more than anyone had handed her something no one ever had. Agency. Clayton stepped back again, farther this time, creating space large enough for her to breathe. I'll wait outside, he said. Take your time. He turned and walked down the aisle alone. No one stopped him. No one spoke. She stood there, the paper heavy in her hands, while the town of Red Willow tried to understand what it had just witnessed. She had come to Red Willow 2 years earlier with nothing but a small trunk and a reputation she did not deserve. Orphaned young. Passed between relatives like a responsibility no one wanted, she had learned to keep her eyes down and her opinions quieter still. When her last guardian died, debts rose faster than sympathy. The marriage had been proposed as a solution, by men who spoke of protection and stability, while looking at her as if she were currency. Clayton Hartwell had not been present for those discussions. He had been out beyond the ridge, settling a boundary dispute between two ranchers who trusted him more than the law. He had returned to find his name already signed beneath hers on a contract she had never agreed to. He could have refused it. He didn't. Instead, he changed it. Clayton Hartwell had learned long ago that power spoken loudly invited challenge. Power exercised quietly reshaped worlds. Years before, he had ridden with men who believed violence solved everything. He had buried friends who mistook fear for respect. He had seen what happened when choice was stripped away, and how it hollowed people from the inside out. When he had found her standing in his doorway that first night, eyes wide but spine straight, something in him had settled into resolve. No one would own her. Not him. Not the town. Not the past. Outside, the sun had dipped lower, painting the dust in amber light. Clayton stood by his horse, hat in hand, listening to the church behind him hold its breath. He did not know if she would come out. He did not wait for gratitude. Minutes passed, then more. Inside, she pressed a hand to her mouth as understanding finally broke through the shock. Tears came not of fear, but release. Ugly, shaking sobs she had never allowed herself before. When she stepped outside at last, the town parted instinctively, as though unsure what she was now. She stopped a few paces from him. You didn't have to do that, she said, voice hoarse. No, Clayton replied. I chose to. She searched his face for expectation, for the hook beneath the kindness. Found none. Why? She asked. He considered her for a moment. Because dignity should never be conditional, he said. And because fear should never be mistaken for love. The words settled into her bones. Behind them, the town watched, silent now for a different reason. The story they had prepared to tell themselves, about a girl broken by circumstance and a man who would finish the work, had collapsed. In its place stood something they did not know how to judge. A woman holding her own future. A man who had given up control and gained respect. Clayton tipped his hat to her. Whatever you decide, he said, you'll have my protection. Not my permission. She looked at the land stretching beyond the buildings, at the hills that rolled like a promise rather than a threat. I think, she said slowly, I'll stay. At least for a while. A corner of his mouth lifted, not a smile but the beginning of one. That's your choice, he said. And for the first time in her life, it truly was. In the days that followed, the town adjusted its gaze. Some apologized. Others stayed quiet, embarrassed by their own assumptions. A few never forgave Clayton for rewriting the rules they relied on. She moved into the house at Willow Creek Acres, learning the land, learning herself. Clayton kept his distance, present when needed, absent when not. Respect grew where fear had been planted. And slowly, carefully, something else took root. Not obligation, not debt. Choice. Years later, when people spoke of that wedding, they no longer talked about the girl who had been forced to the altar. They spoke of the day a town was reminded that power did not have to crush to be real. They spoke of a man who gave a gift no one expected, and a woman who accepted freedom with both hands. Some battles are not won with raised voices or clenched fists. Some are won with restraint, integrity, and the courage to do what is right when no one expects it. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments, and tell us where you're watching from today. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that honor quiet strength, hard choices, and the unseen moments that change everything.